Thank you guys for joining Nikki Speaks TV today, the relationship series. Today in studio, I have a special guest, Dr. Farah, a cardiologist and...
Well, thank you, Nikki, for having me here.
You're welcome.
I am an invasive cardiologist, CEO and founder of Bentley Heart, and director of Global Health Alliance Foundation. So glad to be here with you, Nikki.
I'm glad to have you. Welcome to Nikki Speaks TV, the relationship series. The pandemic forced us all to slow down and do an assessment of our relationships. Whether you're dating, engaged, married, or divorced, we'll share tools to help everyone. Join me this season as my guest and I talk about all things relationships. Well, welcome to my show. I'm so glad to have you here. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and let us know what you do and who you are.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Dr. Farah. I am an invasive cardiologist. I am also the CEO and founder of Bentley Heart Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. And I'm also the director of Global Health Alliance Foundation.
Well, as you know, my show is it's called the Relationship Series, actually is what we're doing now, but I'm also a therapist. And I love what you do, and I wanted to interview you personally because I wanted to ask you just, you know, with the work that you do, tell us a little bit about your training and how mental health does affect the heart sometimes, because I know we've had a side conversation about that I'd like to share.
Yes, absolutely. So as far as my training goes, I went to Texas Tech School of Medicine. That's where I studied medicine for 4 years. After that, I trained in internal medicine. So we have to be board certified in internal medicine before we can start cardiology training. So I trained at Baylor Scott & White in Temple, Texas. And then after that, I did 3 years of additional training, which is cardiovascular disease at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center, which was in Oklahoma City. And after that, I worked for 1 year for a hospital, and I decided that I wanted to go my own direction. So I started my own practice in Fort Worth, Texas, that is Bentley Heart. So it's been a lot of work, but you asked a very important question: how is mental health tied to heart health? And the two are very much tied together. You know, how we feel mentally, our mental health has a direct role in terms of heart health. To give you some example, somebody who is not doing too well from a mental health standpoint, for example, depression. Depression is very widespread, especially in the course of the last 2 years during the pandemic. It has become very, very like the statistics for depression is really bad right now. So why does that matter? When somebody's depressed, they really lose their motivation to do the usual things like working out, for example, or eating healthy. So it's a downhill spiral because they're not eating healthy, they're not able to exercise. Those are two key elements to keep your heart healthy. And so you know, they automatically put themselves in this box where their risk factors are going to increase, such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Their diabetes may go unchecked because when you're depressed, you're not motivated to take your medications either. So compliance goes down with medications. So all those factors play a role. But there are other things too. When we're depressed, we secrete certain stress hormones in our body, like anxiety, for instance. Those have direct impact on our cardiovascular system. You know, we can have arrhythmia, our risk of a heart attack goes up, heart failure, many, many things.
You know, thank you for sharing that. And I was reading an article recently in Psychology Today, and I was just amazed that it said that we have our mind, our emotions, and our heart, and they're all kind of, it's almost like a triangle.
It really is. Our heart and mind are very much connected. And yes, the heart is it's very unique. It's the only organ that has what's called automaticity. In other words, it's capable of functioning entirely on its own. It has its own electricity. And so it's a very, very special and unique organ that, of course, keeps us alive But it's so intricately involved in our emotional being, so our spiritual well-being, our emotional well-being, and our physical health, it's all kind of related to our heart.
Wow. Well, I know during the pandemic, several years has gone by, right? And a lot of people are dealing with what you said, anxiety, depression, all those things. And I'm counseling a lot of them. And sometimes relationships are impacted, and divorce happens, breakups happen, and so forth. What is the impact on the heart when you lose a relationship?
It could be a very damaging impact when you go through a breakup of a serious relationship. Losing a loved one in any form, either through a breakup of a relationship, a divorce, or a death of a loved one, they can all have very detrimental impact on the heart itself. There is a condition called the broken heart syndrome.
I heard that, yeah.
Yes, it's a very real phenomenon. It usually happens when there's a devastating emotional event taking place, such as those that I just described, like a relationship breakup or just loss of a loved one. So what is broken heart syndrome? It's a type of heart failure. So the heart is a pump, and the heart's job is to squeeze blood. That's how we live. It pumps blood out to the rest of our body, and that's what sustains us. What happens in broken heart syndrome, which is a type of heart failure, is when the pump is not able to, the heart itself is not able to function as efficiently. So it's not quite squeezing as well as it should. It's squeezing less so. And as a result, less blood is being pumped out of the heart. And that has a very key effect, several key effects on the body. So a lot of times patients will actually present to the hospital, to the emergency department, with symptoms of heart attack when they're having broken heart syndrome. They will have chest pain, shortness of breath, swelling of their legs. Those are some of the typical signs and symptoms of this. And when we go and see these patients, the treatment is very similar to that of heart attack, actually. So we will actually, even on the EKG, it'll show up as an acute heart attack. There are EKG changes in this condition. And so we'll just rush them to the cath lab to go in there, actually go inside their heart and see if it is in fact a heart attack. And that's the only way we know that it's not a heart attack. It's actually broken heart syndrome. The other name for this condition is called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy.
Oh, wow.
It's stress.
The other one's easier.
It's called stress cardiomyopathy. Both males and females can have it, but it is more common among females.
So tell me, what would you recommend somebody that's gone through a breakup, a divorce, or what have you, male or female? How do they, if it's impacting their heart in some way, they, say for instance, they go to you, they find that out, that they have broken heart syndrome, what can they do to get back on track and get their heart back functioning the way that it should?
Yeah, excellent question. Well, first of all, if you are experiencing these symptoms like chest pain, shortness of breath, don't ignore it, especially when you know that you've gone through an emotional trauma in the recent past. You do need to talk to your doctor, especially a cardiologist. If you're having acute symptoms like, crushing chest pain and things like that, you definitely need to go to the emergency department. And when you see a cardiologist, they will do something called echocardiogram. That's an ultrasound of the heart. And with that, we can assess how well the heart's pump is working, if it's functioning well or not. One good news I will give you about broken heart syndrome is that it is completely curable.
That's good.
So you just have to be on the right medications and receive the right treatment by a cardiologist, and you can completely overcome this condition over time. The other thing is taking care of yourself, regardless of how difficult it is when you're going through an emotional trauma like a breakup. It's important to eat healthy, to continue to exercise. Exercise will give you the energy and the motivation. It really picks you up to do other things. Engage yourself in, just force yourself, because during those times you don't like doing anything. You're depressed. But you need to surround yourself with positive energy, people who are good to you, people who care about you. Let them help you. And those are some of my advice.
Well, and it's interesting because that's some of the same advice that I give to my clients that I'm working with, because depression can feel debilitating, anxiety can feel debilitating. So I just share with them, you have to get up and force yourself, just to do those things that you did before. And if those things aren't working, find new activities, to exercise that will, pique your interest. allow you to get back on track. So now I know that there's a lot of grief that people have experienced in the last couple of years. And, with breakups, you can kind of see that, you can find someone else and those types of things. But sometimes when you have significant loss of a loved one, you're not able to see past that, and it's so final. Would you give the same advice for those people that are in that situation?
I would.
Would you add anything else other than that?
I would give the same advice to them as well. Loss of a loved one is hard. Time is the only thing that's going to heal that.
Right.
And in the interim, it is so important to not allow yourself to fall into the crack where you're not eating healthy, because with those, your risk factors increase. You can have conditions like heart attack, blockages, and those, while they're treatable, they're not irreversible. Right. So it's very important for you to do what's necessary, the bare minimum of eating healthy and exercising, and really surrounding yourself with people who you feel comfortable with, who you can share. I think sharing and having that meaningful conversation is very important to see purpose again, to see meaning again.
Right.
And one thing that, I'm speaking from a personal experience that, whenever I'm down, and the last 2 years have been quite honestly the two of the most difficult years of my life as a healthcare provider, as a physician in the front line, to see so much loss and coming home with that. It takes a toll. Yes, we're physicians. Yes, we're healthcare professionals, but we're humans at the end of the day. And there's mental health issues like depression running wild among healthcare professionals across the board, like from nursing staff to physicians to everybody.
To therapists.
to therapists, yes, because it's a burden. It's something that we have never seen or experienced before.
Right.
And when you're there in the front line, you're working, your hormones are running wild. So you do it. You do what you need to save lives.
Absolutely.
But it's when you come home, it really hits you that, oh goodness, like, so much loss all around us.
Right.
And so it's important for everyone, not just me giving advice to my patients, but even from a personal standpoint, that sometimes it's really important for you to find things that's meaningful to you, but to others as well. What I mean by that is, when I'm not mentally well, like I'm depressed, I don't have the motivation to do anything that I enjoy,
right,
because I simply don't care, right? And that's how most people feel. So what I like to do is I like to engage in what would help others, that would be meaningful. Okay, I'm not doing this for myself, but I'm doing it for others. And so I give, talks, and I make myself available to my patients, and open myself up to the rest of the world, basically, to see if anybody else can benefit from what I have to offer. And sometimes that gives you that meaningful purpose that you have somewhat lost.
Right. And I'm so glad you said that, because I was just talking to a client earlier this morning, and I said, when the pandemic first hit, it was almost as if, there was a global call for therapists. And so I answered that call. And I often compare it to when we were in school, like in grade school. We had a schedule, right? We had art, we had singing, all these different things, all the academics. And so I said, just create your schedule similar to that, and just kind of rotate through your day, and sprinkle in different self-care practices to get you through. So thanks for connecting with us today. Nikki Speaks Therapy is a platform that focuses on sharing tips, tools, and strategies to help you have a healthier and happier life. Follow us at nikkispeakstherapy.com to stay up to date on all Nikki Speaks events. I'm so glad you're here. I think we have a question from an audience member, so we're going to go ahead and ask our wonderful participant today.
So I got a question. So you talked about how, especially after COVID, and, you get a lot of, people's stories, depression, all that stuff that comes into your professional life. And then you talked about how you separate and go home. So, like, what is it you do, or how is it that you do that, you take on all those people's, burdens, those challenges, and then you're able to just separate it and go home and relax? What is it that you do?
Well, that was a really great question. I'm so glad you asked that. You're right. Over the course of the last 2 years, it's been extremely difficult to separate what we do in the front line and come home and separate ourselves from that. For me, when I'm in it, I'm in it. I don't have time to think. I'm just doing what I have to. And on my way back, the drive back, that's when it really all sets in that, oh gosh, I just went through all of this, so much loss around me. And then I go home, I shower. In the shower, many times in the last 2 years, I just broke down. I just let it out. Like I cried like a baby in the shower. And no one saw that. It was just me. That was my outlet, If a person died, as a physician, you feel this extreme failure that you couldn't save that person's life, and the loss, you carry it with you in your heart, and the emotional attachment and the emotional breakdown of the loved ones that you just experienced. And it happened repeatedly over and over a lot in the last 2 years. So, we're humans. We do bring it home with us, but it's very important to separate yourself and finding those outlets. It's okay to cry. We are humans, even though we're physicians, we're healthcare providers, whatever our background is, we need to find those outlets. So I'll give you the steps. On my way, drive back home, it hits me. I'm accepting what I just went through. In the shower, that's an outlet for me. I just let it all out. So by the time I'm out of the shower, a lot of it is lighter, it's already kind of gone. The other step is figuring out your hobbies. This is really when hobbies come into play. I found for myself in the last 2 years, I paint, I do landscape. I went back to that, and that's an outlet. Those distractions are so important. I sing also, so I started, so I started picking up my voice lessons again, started singing, and I created more distractions. So to give you a funny story, we got live chickens at our house as a form of distraction, and it really helped seeing these little chicks grow into big chickens and give us eggs. It's a funny story, but it really was helpful for me. So you have to figure out what those distractions you want there to be in your life so that you can overcome and separate yourself from what you do at workplace.
Love that you said that, just remembering that you're worth it. And I know some people may be listening right now and you may not feel that you're worth it because of what you've experienced, what you're going through right now. And, as we're sharing, it's just a matter of getting back on track and being intentional about finding those things that can help you, feel like you again. And then maybe it's a different version of you, right? Because it's not always that we come out the same. Sometimes we come out a little bit different, not that we're better or worse, it's just we're different. And so we have a new self-worth that we develop and a muscle that we kind of, exercise. I wanted to talk to you about the relationship that we have with food. So many of my clients are at a stuck point with their weight, they're frustrated. I know that our diet and eating is so important to our heart health. So how do you encourage the patients that you have to eat healthy and to have a good relationship with food as they make those choices?
Yes, I think your relationship with food is so important for everything, for your general health, your heart health, your mindset, the whole mind, body, soul, all of it. So heart healthy diet is what I recommend. What I would recommend is the Mediterranean diet. It's been proven to be healthy, heart healthy, definitely. But really, it's been proven to be healthy for all organ systems in our body, like, your skin, hair, nail, all the stuff that's important, right?
All the stuff that lets us look cute.
Right. That's what matters.
Right.
So I would definitely encourage the Mediterranean diet. Recently, the American Heart Association came up with a new set of guidelines, dietary guidelines.
Okay.
And it really focuses on plant-based diet more than ever before.
More so than Mediterranean, or is Mediterranean
even more than Mediterranean?
Oh,
yes,
wow.
Even more than Mediterranean. Mediterranean is still the go-to for us because, not everybody's going to become a vegetarian. I mean,
True.
We're not saying that to be healthy, to be heart healthy, you do not have to be a vegetarian. But the push is towards plant-based diet based on the new guidelines. Just focus on vegetables, add a little bit more, take out a little bit of the unhealthy stuff like red meat. We're really discouraging people from having red meat. For protein, fish. Fish is the main go-to. Any type of fish, but primarily salmon. What I tell my patients, it's basically things that look like a fish, like shrimp, crab, crustaceans, those don't count. Those
Okay.
usually carry more cholesterol. So fish, real fish.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Looks like, feels like, seems like a fish.
Yes.
That's what we eat.
That's what we eat. But salmon is a great go-to. I would definitely say so. Yes.
Okay.
And salmon is great for the skin. So
Now, I love, love, love chocolate chip cookies. I know that's not on the recommended diet. So, what do you do for sweets? If you love sweets or like sweets, trying to break up with sweets, what would you do or what do you eat
yeah,
in those situations?
I'm guilty of having a fairly big sweet tooth myself.
Okay.
I love chocolate. Anything that's chocolatey, I love it. But it's moderation. When it comes to sweet or anything that's unhealthy like alcohol, it really is about moderation. It's
Okay.
not to say that you can't have sweet because you have to live, you have to enjoy life, and food is a great source of enjoyment for all of us. So what I do, I try to stick to dark chocolate, things
Okay.
that are less sweet. I have turned to fruits more lately, trying to be a little bit more healthy. Fruits are really good, and they do carry sugar. So those who are diabetics, they do have to be careful with how much fruit intake they're having in their diet. But berries, like blueberries, for example, they really are power food. They have lots of nutrition and primarily antioxidants that are really good for us. Any kind of berries, blueberries, citrusy fruits like orange, for example,
Okay.
that's good for you. So I know this is not what you want to hear. This is not going to
Tell me.
replace a chocolate chip cookie, but yeah, I think when we're considering dessert, we really should consider fruits.
Okay. Well, tell us what you do for fun. What are some things that you do because I know that you probably carry a lot of stress that you have to manage and, all those things. So what do you do to reset?
Typically under
I know
normal
about the bath, but other than that.
under normal circumstances, I'm talking about prior to COVID, when life used to be somewhat normal. I used to love traveling. I that's one of my most favorite things to do, travel, experience different cultures, different food. But when I'm here at home during the weekends, for example, during my free time, I love to hang out with friends, go out to watch a movie, dinner, going out to experience different restaurants, watching a movie. Those are just typical like everybody else,
Well, good. Well, speak to the camera and the audience and anyone that's listening and kind of share any advice that you would give them as they navigate, whether that's loss or mental health issues or just life in general. From your perspective, what would be, some things that you would like to encourage them with?
I think, we all experience loss at some point in our lives, whether it is through a loss of a loved one by death or a breakup. These are inevitable things that we have to go through in life. Whichever phase of life it comes in, we must remember our own self-worth. Especially when you go through a breakup, it really can take that self-worth away from you. And you get into this spiraling downward spiral where you're not eating healthy, you're not exercising, you're not sleeping at night, and you just don't take care of yourself. And then you look at yourself in the mirror and suddenly you don't look the same anymore. So that adds to your problem, that adds to that negativity that you're just not worth it anymore. So to find that self-worth, I think is step one, to engage with yourself, to introspect, to reflect, and then take the necessary steps. And the steps are fairly easy once you figure that out and you find that motivation that, yes, I'm going to get back up there because, yes, I'm worth it.
Yes.
So then, start sleeping well at night, eat healthy, exercise, and engage in activities that are meaningful to you. And then give back to others as well.
Absolutely.
Everybody has their own ways of regaining that self-worth. For me, it was about giving back. For me, about giving what I can provide for others, which is through talks, through opening myself up as a physician and providing my advice to my patients and everybody else who would benefit from that. That's how I regain my strength. So you have to, as an individual, figure out what works for you and go with it. And always remember that you are worth it. There's a
Yes.
purpose you have that has been given to you, and you have to find that purpose and serve that purpose.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So what are the signs that brought something to my attention? What are the signs that a person would notice within their body to actually go seek help, to get tested, to make sure they're okay, to make sure their heart is healthy? So I think sometimes we question that. We may feel something,
Yes.
and then we don't know when to go seek help.
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that. This is actually February is the American Heart Month.
Oh,
So
perfect.
yay! So we can talk about this and raise awareness.
Absolutely.
Heart disease is actually the #1 killer for both men and women here in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yes, we lose one person every 60 seconds practically to heart disease here in the United States. So what are some of the symptoms? Some of the symptoms that you should know, it's very important, would be chest pain, shortness of breath, swelling, palpitations. These are all very common symptoms that could be directing you towards, that, hey, there may be something going on with my heart, and seek help. However, when it comes to women, especially women, they sometimes might not have the classic symptoms.
Oh.
So they will have what's called the atypical symptoms, where they may not have chest pain at all.
Oh, wow.
They will have just indigestion-like symptoms, like, it'll just feel like, oh, I'm just having a bad episode of reflux. And they'll take something over the counter like Tums, and if it doesn't go away, that's your sign that there may be something going on.
Right.
Fatigue is another one. I have had a lot of patients where they haven't had any cardiac symptoms, no chest pain, but they were just very fatigued. They were sleepy all the time. And it turned out that they had a blockage in their heart. And once we fixed it, they were back to normal. They got their energy back. I will give you one example. This actually happened in my clinic. I had a patient who came in, just her regular follow-up visit with me. And we do an EKG, it's a cardiology clinic. So whenever we get a chance, we do an EKG just to get a baseline to make sure everything's okay.
Right.
And we did an EKG on that patient that day. And the EKG caught it that she was having a heart attack. She was having actually what's called ST elevation myocardial infarction. That is a massive heart attack. She was having it in my clinic.
Oh, wow.
So the tech ran to my office with that EKG in her hand, showing me, this is what I just did on this patient. And I ran to the room and I asked her, are you having any chest pain? She said, no, but I feel very sleepy. She looked sleepy, which was unusual for her. This is something that, a patient that I've had for some time, so I know how she is at baseline.
Right.
She looked very fatigued, very tired, and she just kept telling me, I just feel really sleepy. And so, I, of course, called EMS when we transferred her to the hospital, and we took her to the cath lab, and sure enough, she was having a massive heart attack. So we fixed her, we put a stent in her heart, and she did great, and she's so grateful that we did that EKG. A lot of times patients give us pushback. Why do we need to do an EKG? There's a purpose. Yeah.
I mean, like perfect timing for her to be right there, to get the help that you need.
Yes,
She needed.
yes. That was very lucky.
Right. What's your why? Why do you do what you do, and what's the passion behind it?
Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of training, a lot of schooling. So
Yes. To be a cardiologist, it was 14 years of training.
Oh my goodness.
So yes, the road was long, to say the least. But yes, the reason I'm in it is a simple answer is to help people. I actually come from a family where we have a lot of people who died from heart disease. I grew up seeing heart attack and death in family members. And so I have been in that setting a lot, in that vulnerable setting, in hospital setting for family members. And so since a little kid, I always knew that I wanted to be a physician and a cardiologist. And the more I trained, the more intriguing it was to me how fascinating the heart was. So it just kind of guided me in this path.
Wow, so awesome. And I love that you do this. Thank you, guys. I know that you enjoyed the show and watching. And tell them how to follow you, like, love, and support. I know you have your own show, too, so you can speak about that. If you don't mind.
Yes, we are launching my own show. It is going to be called The Queen of Hearts. It is coming
I love
this.
the title.
Thank you. It is coming this spring of 2022. This is in honor of people, really. It's the reason it's called Queen of Hearts is because everything on this show is going to come right from the heart. We will, of course, be covering a lot about the heart. So I hope that I will be speaking to you guys a lot more in the future. Yeah, and it was a pleasure to be here with
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for having me.
What's your Instagram and
Oh,
social media handle?
Yes, you can find me at on Twitter and Instagram at Fahmi J Farah. At Fahmi J Farah.
I really appreciate you being here, and thank you guys for watching. Thank you to my guests, my audience. See you next time. Thank you all for joining my show today on Nikki Speaks TV, the Relationships series. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, or you can visit me at nikkispeakstherapy.com. See you next time.